The wind moved through the high mountain pass with a low, mournful sound, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. It was a place of ancient rock and harsh beauty, a world away from the chaos of war. Lieutenant Marcus Shotgun Williams, a 10-year veteran of the United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the distant figure. Through his high-powered spotting scope, the world compressed into a tunnel of magnified reality. He watched her with the quiet intensity of a man who had spent his entire adult life studying the art of combat. She was an anomaly in this brutal landscape, a woman, alone, perched on a rocky outcrop nearly a kilometer away. She sat with her back against a boulder, the afternoon sun catching the auburn highlights in her hair, which was pulled back in a simple, functional braid. In her hands, cradled with the casual ease one might reserve for a sleeping child, was a disassembled Barrett M82A1, and she was cleaning it. Williams had been a SEAL for over a decade. He had operated in 50 countries, seen things that would shatter the minds of ordinary people, and worked alongside some of the most lethal professionals on the planet. He could read a man's character in the way he held himself, in the waist-show adjustments of his posture, in the economy of his movements. And this woman, this solitary figure in the mountains, fascinated him. Her movements were not just practiced, they were ceremonial. She wiped down the massive bolt with a soft cloth, her fingers tracing the metal with a familiarity that was almost sensual. She held the heavy barrel up to the light, inspecting the bore with a squinted eye, ensuring its perfection. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. It was the discipline of a concert pianist or a master surgeon. He had seen that level of focus before, but only in the very best of his own community. He lowered his scope for a moment, rubbing his eyes. "Sir?" The voice came from behind him. It was Roberts, his young radio man, who had been watching the same woman through his own rifle's scope, a hint of nervousness in his tone. "We got a positive ID from Langley. The satellite imagery matched. That's her. Call sign Zoria." Zoraya. In Slavic folklore, she was the goddess of dawn and dusk, a guardian warrior. The name had been popping up in intelligence briefs for the last 18 months, and a ghost story told in the hushed tones of special operations forces across the globe, a freelance operative, unaffiliated with any official military, who took on contracts that no one else would touch. The official reports were vague, filled with caveats and question marks. The unofficial scuttlebutt was pure legend. They said she could put a bullet through a coin from a mile away. They said she had ended conflicts before they could start with a single, impossibly placed shot. And they said she wasn't real. Yet here she was, real as the rocks beneath his feet, sitting in the middle of a disputed border region, casually cleaning her rifle like a tourist on a picnic. "Why is she here, Marcus?" The question came from his left, a low murmur. Master Chief Thomas Tex Henderson, his second-in-command, had crawled up beside him, his own optics trained on the woman. Tex was a solid block of a man from the Texas Hill Country, a man of few words and impeccable instincts. This is Chechen territory, far outside her usual sandbox, and she's not exactly hiding." Williams didn't answer immediately. He was too busy watching. He saw her finish with the barrel and pick up the massive lower receiver. She checked the trigger mechanism with a delicate touch, then began to reassemble the weapon with fluid precision. It was a ballet of destruction. The Barrett .50 caliber was not a rifle for the faint of heart. It was a tool for destroying material, trucks, radar installations, or light armor. Weighing nearly 30 pounds and firing a cartridge the size of a Red Bull can, it was a handful for any shooter. The recoil was punishing. The skill required to shoot it accurately at extreme distances was monumental. To see a woman of her slight build handle it with such authority was unnerving. "She's waiting," Williams finally said, his voice flat. "She's not hiding because she's not here for us. She's on a clock. I'm waiting for a specific window. He scanned the valley below them. It was a natural choke point, a winding road that snaked between two sheer rock faces, a perfect spot for an ambush. A convoy was expected through here in the next 24 hours. A high-value target, a warlord with ties to numerous extremist groups, was rumored to be moving with that convoy. Their own mission, a black op to capture or kill that same target, had just become infinitely more complicated. He looked back through the scope. She had finished reassembling the rifle. Now she was lying prone on the outcrop, her body molded to the rock. She adjusted the bipod, checked the massive scope, and then grew utterly still. She was ranging the distance, calculating the wind speed by watching the dust devils far below, feeling the temperature on her skin to account for the bullet's drop. Williams knew the math involved. At extreme range, the .50 caliber bullet could drop dozens of feet and drift significantly off course. A sniper had to account for the Coriolis effect, the rotation of the Earth, at these distances. It was physics, precision, and art combined. He checked his own equipment. His team's mission was a takedown, a close-quarters assault on the convoy as it stopped at a makeshift checkpoint they were going to establish. They were the hammer. Zoraya, it seemed, was the scalpel. And a scalpel that could reach out and touch someone from over 3 kilometers away. He did a quick calculation in his head. The road was far below her position. He estimated the slant range. It had to be pushing 3,000 meters. No one made shots at that distance. It was beyond the envelope of possibility. It was folklore. Hours passed. The sun began its slow descent toward the jagged peaks, casting long, distorted shadows across the valley floor. Williams's team was in position, and hidden in the rocks near the road. The tension was a palpable thing, a tightness in the chest, a dryness in the mouth. Then the radio crackled. "Eagle Eye to Snake Pit. Convoy is moving. ETA to your position, 30 minutes. I count 4 technicals and 1 armored SUV. It was the forward observer in an OP further down the pass. The next half hour was the worst part of any operation, the waiting. Williams allowed himself one last look at Zoraya's position. She hadn't moved. She was a part of the landscape now, indistinguishable from the rock itself. A true predator. The throaty rumble of diesel engines broke the silence of the valley. The convoy appeared, crawling along the rough road like a dark serpent. The technicals, pickup trucks with heavy machine guns mounted in the back, bounced and swayed, their gunners scanning the cliffs with bored expressions. In the center of the convoy was the armored SUV, its windows tinted black. Williams gave the hand signal, and his men tensed, ready to spring the trap. They were the wolves, waiting for the sheep to enter the pen. But as the lead vehicle passed a specific rock formation, something unexpected happened. The SUV didn't stop. It suddenly accelerated, swerving around the technical in front of it and speeding toward a narrow side canyon that wasn't on any of their maps. It was a rat line, an escape route. The intelligence was wrong. The warlord had a backup plan. "Now! Go! Go! Go!" Williams shouted into his radio. But even as he and his team broke cover, he knew they were too late. The SUV was already disappearing into the canyon, its dust trail the only proof it had ever been there. The technicals were stopping, their gunners opening fire to provide cover for the escape. The mission was about to fall apart in a blaze of useless gunfire, and then the valley screamed. And it wasn't a sound that traveled through the air so much as a physical force that tore through the very fabric of the mountain pass. The deep, guttural thoom of a .50 caliber rifle echoed off the cliffs, rolling and reverberating for a solid 10 seconds. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated power. Williams's eyes snapped back to the canyon entrance. The SUV was gone, but it hadn't disappeared. It was still there, but it was no longer moving. It had plowed into the canyon wall, at its front end crumpled like tinfoil. A plume of black smoke began to rise from its engine compartment. He couldn't process what he was seeing. The SUV was nearly 2 miles away from Zoraya's position. It had been moving fast, swerving erratically. The angle was difficult. The light was fading. It was an impossible shot. A 1-in-a-billion magical, impossible shot. He swung his scope up to her position. For a split second, he saw her. She had risen to one knee. The massive Barrett held easily in her grip. She wasn't looking at the wreckage. She was looking directly at him. Even at that impossible distance, through the shimmering heat haze and the fading light, he felt the weight of her gaze. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple acknowledgement, a professional acknowledging another professional. Then, as silently as she had appeared, she melted back into the rocks, swallowed by the mountain. She was gone. And the firefight with the technicals lasted another 15 minutes. Williams's team, now free from the threat of the fleeing SUV, made short work of the remaining fighters. When they finally reached the crashed vehicle, they found the warlord inside, dead. He hadn't been killed by the crash. A single massive .50 caliber round had punched through the armored glass of the rear door, passed through the front seat, and struck him in the chest. The exit wound was the size of a dinner plate, though the car was a blood-soaked tomb. Later that night, back at a temporary safe house, the team sat in stunned silence. Roberts kept muttering, 3,247 meters. That's what the tech guys estimated. Over 2 miles. It's not possible. Tex just shook his head, a look of profound respect on his weathered face. The hell it ain't. We just saw it. Williams said nothing. He sat apart from the others, staring at a point on the wall. He replayed the scene in his mind over and over again, the echo of the shot, the impossible flight of the bullet, the silent acknowledgement from the woman on the mountain. He thought about the name, Zoraya, the dawn, the dusk, a guardian at the threshold of light and dark. She was a ghost, a myth, a force of nature. She was the most lethal human being he had ever witnessed, and for the rest of his life, whenever he closed his eyes, he would see her standing there, a figure of stone and shadow, as her impossible shot echoed through the valley. The memory of it would stiffen his spine, a reminder that in the shadows where they operated, there were always greater depths and more terrible angels than he could ever imagine.